This video is to help train greeters and ushers serving at Byron United Church during the pandemic. Thank you for considering volunteering in these roles. In order to keep everyone safe, we need a number of greeters and ushers for each worship service. Greeters are responsible for ensuring that everyone arriving has been properly screened and checked in. Ushers are responsible for ensuring that people sit in appropriate spaces. The work of the greeters will finish when worship service begins, with the exception of the greeter operating the elevator, should anyone be needing it. The role of the ushers happens both before and after worship services. Let's look first at the role of the greeters. There will be a greeter outside. There will be a greeter at the registration table. And if we know that someone is coming who needs the elevator, we will need a greeter for the elevator. During the initial Sundays in September, when everybody is returning for the first time, we will also need a greeter at the waiver table. Let's look at each of these positions. If the weather is good, people coming for worship will gather outside by the front steps of the church. Let's look at this scenario first. The outside greeter will be at the top of the stairs at the front of the church. The outside greeter is responsible for a number of things. First of all, the outside greeter needs to ask if anyone's responses to the health questions has changed since they RSVP'd. The outside greeter will have a laminated sheet with those health questions on them. Secondly, this greeter needs to ensure that each person entering the building is wearing a mask. If they don't have a mask, there are masks available just inside the door. And thirdly, this greeter can be asking if people have submitted their signed liability waiver. If people don't have their waiver with them and have not yet submitted them, this greeter should direct them to the waiver table just inside the door. The registration table greeter will be seated behind a plexiglass shield. This greeter will be provided with a list of everyone who has RSVP'd that they are attending worship today. They are responsible for checking off each person as they arrive. This same attendance list will also indicate whether those coming have already submitted their signed liability waiver. If not, this greeter will ensure that they submit their signed liability waiver. And thirdly, the registration table greeter will point out to people who are arriving the offering box. The first time everyone comes for worship at the church, they will need to submit a signed liability waiver. And so for the first few Sundays, we'll have a greeter staffing the liability waiver table. Their role is simply to ensure that people take the time to read the liability waiver and to sign it. The waiver is handed in at the registration table. Because people need to complete the RSVP process, we will know if anyone will need the elevator on any given Sunday. If so, we will need a greeter to operate the elevator. The greeter will wait before worship downstairs in the corner of the gym where the elevator is. If the person or family arriving is able to operate the elevator themselves, the elevator greeter does not ride with them. If, however, the person needing the elevator is not able to operate it, the elevator greeter should ride with them, facing away from everyone else in the elevator. If the elevator greeter is not riding in the elevator, he or she should walk upstairs and ensure that people exit the elevator safely, and then they would bring the elevator back down and sanitize it if anyone else will be using it that morning. The elevator greeter should ensure that the person or people using the elevator know where they are to sit when they arrive in the sanctuary. People using the elevator will sit in the front left corner of the sanctuary, either remaining in their wheelchair or slipping into the front pew designated with the green tape. If people from two different households will be needing the elevator on the same day, two separate spaces will be reserved for them prior to worship. After the worship service, naturally, the elevator greeter will ensure that people exit the building safely with the elevator as well. When the weather is bad and we cannot have people lining up outside, everyone will enter the building through the gym doors. Once again, the outside greeter will perform the same roles as described earlier. And just like before, the greeter at the registration will check off people from the RSVP list, and if necessary, ask people to hand in their signed waiver, and again point out the offering donation box. If we have bad weather in September, we would also like to have a greeter at the waiver table. So to recap, these are the greeters that we will be requiring during worship. An outside greeter, ensuring that people's responses to the medical questions have not changed and that people are wearing masks, and asking if people who are arriving need to sign their liability waiver, and if so, directing them to that table. The greeter at the registration table will check people off the RSVP list and also look to see whether they need to be handing in a signed waiver, collecting those, and pointing out to people the offering box. The elevator greeter will welcome those needing the elevator and ensure that they arrive safely in their seat. And in September, when this will be new for everyone, we would also like to have a greeter at the waiver table as well. If you see yourself volunteering for any of these roles, please let us know. And now, let's look at the role of the ushers. There will be 2 ushers working each Sunday morning, a back usher and a front usher. As people begin to arrive for worship, the back usher will be standing behind the back pew, making sure that people are staying physically distant. The front usher will stand in the center aisle near the front of the sanctuary, near the front pews. The 2 ushers will coordinate together, people processing up the center aisle when it is safe to do so. The front usher will begin seating people from the front pews, working their way toward the back as the pews fill. There is green tape on some of the pews to indicate where 1 or 2 people may sit. Unfortunately, families of 3 or more people will not be able to sit together, but must occupy 2 or more bubbles or circles in order to maintain the minimum 6-foot distance from other individuals not in their family. These green arrows indicate the distancing circles that our sanctuary can accommodate. You can see that every other pew is taped off on the inside aisles. On some Sundays, the number of people who RSVP'd may require that we also make use of the balcony in order to accommodate everyone. Once again, every other pew will be roped off, and green tape will indicate where people may sit. The ushers will be responsible for ensuring that people sit in the appropriate spaces. At the close of each worship service, the 2 ushers will again work in coordination to ensure that people maintain physical distancing while exiting the sanctuary. If there is anyone in the balcony, the ushers will ensure that they exit first. And then, starting at the back, with the soundboard and multimedia operators exiting next, the ushers will work their way from the back toward the front of the sanctuary, as shown in this video. While one usher works their way forward, emptying pews from the back toward the front, the other usher will stay at the back and coordinate people exiting through the one door, ensuring physical distancing. Thank you for reviewing this training and the roles of greeters and ushers during this pandemic. We are working hard to ensure that anyone coming for worship at the church is kept as safe as possible. Thank you very much for considering serving as a greeter and/or usher during these trying days. May the Lord continue to bless you as you strive to bless others.